Hello, I'm Loïc.
And I'm Marlon, and we're here today for another exciting episode of FoME Friend. This is a series where we sit down with professionals in the medical engineering field to learn more. In this episode, we chat to Sha and Cait from Field Orthopaedics.
We're going to hear about some of the interesting work that happens in the Brisbane startup and how working there has given them opportunities to grow. Enjoy the episode. Hey Cait, hey Sha, how are you guys doing?
Good.
Very well, thank you.
We'd like to start off the first part of the interview with like a fun question. So if you had to pick one song to kind of be the theme song of your life, what would you pick?
Oh, that's hard.
I wasn't prepared for this.
I'm probably going to go with September by Earth, Wind and Fire. It's my happy song. It's my psych up song.
Cool.
You're never in a bad mood when you hear that.
Yeah, that's a good one. I'm probably going to have to go with It's My Life by Bon Jovi.
Nice.
Love it.
So
Just some classics.
Iconic.
Oh, the bang! You gotta have the bangers. So for those who are not familiar, can you give us a rundown of what Field Orthopaedics do and a quick overview of your each of your roles?
So Field Orthopaedics, for those who don't know, we're a young company. We started about 4 or 5 years ago. It's a startup, and our main focus was to address the needs in the orthopedic space. So we work very closely with surgeons to try and address the problems that they have, because what we found was orthopedics is quite an relatively old business, and there hasn't been very much improvements over time that has been made. So what we aim to do is to really work with the surgeon and figure out what needs they have, and what the market really needs as well in their solutions to try and provide better healthcare in what we do in the design and development process. So we're still a relatively small team, and we work through the whole design and development process for medical devices. Like I said before, working with the user to figure out their requirements, and bringing that all the way through to implementing devices on the market and doing the post-market stuff, so following it up and managing its effectiveness and everything like that. So pretty broad spectrum of things.
And so what's your primary role, Sha?
So my primary role is, at the moment, I'm working in the bony trauma space. So I'm working with everything to do with fracture management, pretty much everything to do with your bones and skeletal trauma. So our main project focus over the last few years has been screws. So that was our first device that was released on the market, which was last year, which was exciting. And now we're working on expanding on that range to provide a more comprehensive solution to fracture management. So I work with a team in that space, and we're working on new products there. And like I said before, just taking it through the whole design and development process, so that we can really get some novel solutions that are going to have a high impact from a user point of view, but also improving the patient healthcare as well.
That's super interesting. And for you, Cait, what was your role?
So I actually worked under Sha for my first year and a bit out of uni. So I'm a design engineer with Field. So I'm the same. I work in research and development for orthopedic medical implants. I currently work in a new portfolio, but I'm still doing very much the same sort of thing where we're working through from user needs and clinical input through feasibility assessments and testing, risk management, all of the above. So I'm still doing very much the same sort of thing, just applied to a different area. And I'm also the intern and student mentor for undergraduate work integrated learning students and final year project students who come through and do an industry placed project. So I also spend a bit of time in my work week working with those students and facilitating them with some real world activities, I guess, but the whole team helps with that, which is great.
Do you find that you ever have to jump around to different roles to fill what's needed?
Is that a trick question?
Yes.
Every damn day. Not in a bad way. Yeah, it's very much, we need you here, so this is what you need to do. And case in point is this COVID-19 response project. I'm stopping my work on my project full time for sort of 3 or 4 weeks to jump onto this. So which is not a bad thing, but yeah, so stuff like that does happen. Or, you know, Sha can testify, you've got to do the drawings, then you'll do testing and just a bit of everything.
Yeah, I think you really, I think you probably heard it from a few people that in the startup you wear many hats and you're doing quite a few different roles. But when you're in the thick of it, you really are you could be doing procurement or like working with manufacturing one day and then doing design development the next day and doing quite a vast variety of different tasks day to day. But I guess it keeps it exciting and it is challenging, but then it is really rewarding at the end because you do get to experience quite a lot. And yeah, now Cait's getting to experience something that's completely different to our actual project, which is good.
Yeah, it definitely keeps you on your toes.
Yeah.
So this is a question for both of you, and we'll start with Cait. Are your roles quite desk heavy, or do you have quite a lot of technical lab time?
And do you have much interaction with patients and healthcare professionals?
So yeah, I mean, we're all predominantly office based, but certain phases of projects will require heavy input from subject matter experts. So we do still spend a decent amount of time communicating via phone and email with clinical staff or surgeons if they're not available to meet in person. So we are extremely fortunate with the I guess the founders of our company still work up the road, so along with our CEO. So we're really lucky, and we have those ties to some very generous surgeons who give us a lot of time and energy. And so I think most of us get to work quite closely with clinicians. I wouldn't say we don't work with patients. So we talk more about end users when we talk about that. So that can be anybody who, from the sterilizers, so someone working in the central sterilization department of the hospital, to the surgeons, to the scrub staff. So you sort of need those opinions coming from everybody, and we're very lucky that we get to get that input ourselves. But yeah, otherwise, I mean, I don't personally do a lot of lab time. I'm not at that stage in my project, basically. But once you get to sort of B&B, we do have a designated test engineer, so shout out to Maclay. He's also from QT, but the design engineers do conduct, you know, theoretical simulations. So we do FEA still and calcs using Excel or hand calcs. We still do that in-house, but and we can help with bench testing. But yeah, otherwise it's desk heavy.
Yeah, I think Cait hit the nail on the head. It is desk heavy, but there is still a variety, so you're not locked into your desk pretty much. And then during those testing times, you can have some variety in actually going and working with the testing engineer and getting your testing results and working in the lab and everything like that. But I'd say predominantly you're focused on internally working in-house with the other engineers and meeting and discussing things externally.
Cool. So for both of you, I was under that understanding that Field Orthopaedics is like your first major role in the medical engineering industry. What drew you to the startup? Was it just the best opportunity that was out there, or were there some certain perks that interested you?
I guess the biggest attraction was that it was uncharted territory. I actually was working at a mechanical manufacturing and fabrication engineering firm on the north side, but I did that in the last sort of semester of my degree, but medical engineering is where the passion was. And when I was offered a job, it was pretty hard to say no to doing something that I was really excited about and, you know, in the area that I've been studying. So it was pretty great because it offers this really unique learning opportunity where you sort of get to sit in 5 or 6 areas of engineering in one role. So much like Sha said, you know, you can be working in procurement or needing to do things in the manufacturing space, but we all need to dip our fingers into testing and regulatory, and we're all deeply involved with quality management and R&D. So I guess being a startup, there was beanbags when I first started. That was pretty exciting at the time. But I think the collaborative atmosphere and the people are a massive factor. So it was exciting, I think, as well.
Yeah, it's definitely the same for me, and it's probably a realization that you go into something where you do get to experience all those different areas that you pretty much have studied for, you done your studies or whatever postgraduate studies you've done, and then you're in a workplace that you can really practice all those different areas and put them all to the test, and it's really good from that point of view, and it is really attractive, like Cait said. And if you have a passion for design development, it's definitely the space to get into because you get that wide variety of exposure. Well, I guess what I wasn't ready for was how fast-paced it was. So it is definitely a fast-paced environment, and it can be challenging at times, but I guess that does make it rewarding at the end. I think Cait will probably agree that it is probably, until you have experienced it, it's hard to prepare for.
I think it's a very different type of pressure. You know, we work really closely together because we're a really small team, and anything that one of us is feeling, everyone else will feel acutely. We're all so aware of what's going on in everybody else's projects and the pressures that we face. And so that support network and the people that are with you who are living the same experience as you, that's a big factor in what makes your workday enjoyable, is having people around you who understand what it's like. But exactly what Sha said, it's really self-directed because there's a lot of things that hadn't happened. Like there's not necessarily the infrastructure in place that you'd get working at a larger company. So there's also opportunity there to have input into how procedures work or how templates are done. And that might seem really mundane, but it's actually pretty cool to help build the infrastructure of a company from the ground up. And that's a really unique opportunity. I don't think many people working in large companies as graduate engineers would get that opportunity. So we're very lucky.
That's great. So you've mentioned that, you know, you've had to grow your knowledge in a few areas recently, especially when you've been jumping on that new project for COVID-19. How often do you have to go back to the books and look up some of the principles, and, you know, how would you go about finding this knowledge?
Probably most days. We definitely don't know everything, and I always thought it was pretty funny when I was working at my last job and my boss still had textbooks from uni in his bookshelf, and I just thought it was a joke, but it wasn't. You definitely need them because you don't retain all of that information. So, I mean, there's textbooks, but I think some of the most useful information out there is excellent clinical literature for us. And obviously manufacturing, materials, engineering, there's amazing journals, and also through universities. You can access all of that, books, YouTube, to be honest. There's some incredible blogs as well dedicated to medical devices, and you can get some really valuable information from there. Regulatory bodies and notified bodies are also another, they have so much information. So that's really cool to dip into, like the TGA and the FDA in the States. But yeah, I guess it's a combination of things. So it's using the time to try and find that information yourself and try to understand and wrap your head around the concepts. But again, like I've said, we're very fortunate, but we're able to then go and validate that understanding with somebody who's a subject matter expert. And a lot of the time that is in the clinical space. But, you know, that can be speaking to the manufacturing engineer, or that can be talking to Kelly, who's worked in the industry for a long time. So going that step further to validate that knowledge with somebody and reinforce your understanding usually puts you on track pretty quick.
Oh, that's really interesting. And for this question is more directed to you, Sha. How did you find working while completing your PhD? And did you find your PhD kind of helped you with your current career?
Yeah, it's a pretty frequent question that I get. Having done a PhD and then going into the industry afterwards, working and doing my PhD at the same time, I guess it worked out a little bit for me. I did only work part-time, so I definitely wouldn't have worked if I had to work full-time and do my PhD. It is quite a big undertaking. But if I were to give some advice to people who are thinking about getting into PhDs, I'd say definitely get into an area that you're passionate about and that you enjoy working in the topic space, and because you can dedicate 3 to 4 years of your life working on that. So whether you want to do it to get into an academic role later on, or you want to get in the industry after, it still matters how you transition into that and complete your PhD. So if you can do it in a space that's enjoyable and you actually like the topic, it's going to be a lot easier to get through those challenges and working as well. I guess for me, I kind of tailored what I wanted to do in my PhD to where I saw myself working. So I'm really passionate about design and development. So my focus wasn't really to get into an academic role after I finished my PhD. I wanted to develop my skills in the design and development area so that I could get into a similar sort of role that I'm in now. And I think what a lot of people don't realize is that you do have that opportunity when you're undertaking your PhD studies to direct how you're learning the skills, what skills you're picking up, so that it will help you where you're going to end up later on. So having that more broad focus about what am I doing in my PhD now that's going to help me later on is going to be really helpful. And you'll be able to build those skills. And even if you're not doing a project in the design space, you might be doing something completely research-based. You still pick up a lot of skills in your PhD studies that will help you in the workforce later on, stuff like management, communication and leadership. So like doing a PhD is a big task in project management, as well as the deliverables of whatever you're working on. So you do actually pick up a lot of skills in the 3 to 4 years that you work on that is translatable into the manufacturing space.
So along the same lines, Sha, did you find it hard to be motivated to kind of continuing at the pace you were going with your PhD, or did you find like that you needed to take a break? Because it is a long period of time to study.
Yeah, I guess along the similar lines is that I was passionate about the area that I was studying, so it was a really enjoyable time of my life during my PhD studies. So I didn't really get to the point where I was like, this is too much, because I did enjoy it so much. But I think it is all too frequent that you hear about people who are doing research that they're not really that into, or they don't really enjoy that much, and maybe biting off a bit more than they can chew. And then that's where it's really hard to drive through those situations or those challenges, and then needing more of a break from your research because of that probably will result more. So I can't really speak from experience on that, but I guess I'm passionate about trying to tell people that they have a lot of choice in what they end up doing their studies in, and really setting themselves up well for what their topic is and what their projects can be, can really direct how they feel towards their PhD and their outcomes as well.
Yeah, that's really good advice for people interested in the PhD. This question is probably more for you, Cait. For what kind of work are you guys doing for the COVID response?
So we are working on a Class 1 submission to the TGA. So that's the rapid design and development and manufacturing of a face shield. So that's the headband with the clear visor that goes over your face. So that's what we're working on at the moment. So being class 1, there aren't there isn't the same level of sort of technical documentation required for that. So Kelly, our CTO, has done a load of the legwork, and we go through sending out expression of interest. With the partnership with the Queensland government, they're pairing us with manufacturers, so they've sort of helped with that vetting stage, and working really closely with the Metro North region of Queensland Health, who have been pretty extraordinary to work with. So they provide a lot of insight there about what they need from this type of device, and that filters through into our user needs and design inputs. And we're pulling all of that information across into product design requirements and acceptance criteria for testing within literally the space of a couple of days, and it's something that would usually take us a lot longer. So I believe we've got to turn this around in sort of 3 weeks. So it's extremely fast paced, and it's like nothing I've ever done before, but I'm pretty excited.
Wow, that must be amazing to be able to work on something so relevant. That's really important right now. So we also had a special question from Kieran at Field, and he wanted to know what benefit does testing add?
Kieran. Kieran. Testing's so important. I'm going to validate that with a response. It's a critical stage of the design cycle, and to verify and validate that your product does what it's meant to and that it meets the user needs.
Yes, it's spot on, Cait.
Oh, that's good.
Short and simple.
So for you guys as well, what's the relationship like when you interact with larger companies? I'm sure you have competitors in the orthopedics field, especially for you, Sha. How has this changed your inspiration and processes designing new devices?
From a communicating point of view, we don't really chat to competitors that much. I think kind of steer clear of each other a little bit. But in terms of how my role kind of changed in communicating to people over time, I guess when I started at the company, when it was very small, you sort of, like we were talking about earlier, are doing a lot more roles more broadly. So you could be talking to quite a few more people. And then at that time, it is right, you're talking to them as a small company. Potentially you don't have a device on the market, so you don't have a lot of weight behind you. But I still found that you build a good network of the people who are willing to help you. And a lot of people out there are willing to help smaller companies. And it does make a huge difference in talking to these people and really learning from them. And then I guess as you transition, so we got the device on the market and now it's being used. So my role's kind of transitioned into who I'm communicating with, because it has become more specific. So as we got a device on the market, our company rapidly expanded. So then we ended up getting more people dedicated to more specific roles. And definitely I wouldn't say I have a specific role at the moment. It's still quite broad, but I definitely don't have to communicate with the array of people that I used to when we were a lot smaller.
So now that you've got your first device on the market, is this just being sold in Australia, or is it being implemented globally, or can you comment on that kind of stage of the device?
Yeah, so we're in Australia and the US at the moment. So our first surgery was in Australia last year, and now we've got market clearance in the US as well. So we're working on a few other regions too, but they're the main two at the moment.
So with that as well, now that you've kind of broken the barrier of the US market, does it become easier to try and implement your devices in other countries?
It depends. Other countries and other regions have different sort of rules and regulations. So we might do one submission for the US and target very specifically the sort of things that they want to see and they like to see. But internally, we also have our own procedures that we need to stick to, which should cover us off broadly across the different regulations. But you might find between region to region, you actually have a different set of regulations that might be quite challenging to address both at the same time.
It definitely gives you a heap of respect for a solid quality management system, because when you've got 1 through 485 like we do, I mean, it's huge. It's such a beast, and understanding good quality control definitely helps you respect why documentation is so important, but it also makes your life so much easier once you get to regulatory submissions. And like Sha said, there's just these variations between regions, and usually when you have a sound QMS in place, a lot of the time you're documenting that stuff anyway, but most of it's just us learning as we go, because we are such a small company. So I'm sure everybody else had to do the same thing, but yeah.
Cool. So, going along the same lines of that, you guys have both been part of committees, and Cait, you were actually part of FoME in 2017 as the president. How important do you think it was, being part of FoME, and do you think it's helped benefit you professionally?
Yeah, of course. I mean, for starters, it's why I have my job. So I'd say it's helped me quite a bit. So being the president of FoME, I guess, gave me a lot in terms of, confidence as well in my own abilities, but also reaffirmed that I was passionate about what I was doing and that I was interested in medical engineering, because I think that's probably a pretty understandable fear a lot of people have when you get into 3rd and 4th year of not knowing what you want to do afterwards. And I got an internship position with Field, with Sha, by inviting Chris, our CEO, to come and speak at the FoME event. And so that sort of kick-started my relationship with Field Orthopaedics, and went from strength to strength, I'd like to think. So I'd say that was super important for me in terms of creating those professional networks, but also it allowed me to give back to my cohort. And that was so important for me. I think because medical engineering is a really small subset of the engineering discipline, I think it can be really difficult to feel welcome, I guess, and to feel like you have the support network with you at uni. So that's super important for me. Is, committees are there for a reason, and it's for you to have input and to give back to your educational or professional community. And that's not for everybody, which is understandable, but for me that gives me a real sense of purpose, and I'm very grateful.
Yeah, it definitely gives you a lot, being part of the different committees and also getting to give back. So Field has given you both opportunities to lead very early on in your career. And we just want to ask, how did you develop the leadership skills? What advice would you give others who are starting those leadership roles? And especially because you're being part of a startup, you have to make a lot of tough decisions. So how do you give yourself that confidence and back yourself to make these decisions? Maybe we start with you, Sha, and then finish with UK.
That's a great question. Like I probably said earlier, it does feel a little bit like you get thrown in the deep end, and working across a wide variety of different areas in your role. So it's hard to be, very good at one thing and then expect that that's the only thing that you do in your job. So it's definitely the opposite for us here, is that we are required to be across a lot of things. So I guess what I found was for leadership, probably a misconception is that you need to know a great deal about different topics and different aspects of the roles to be a leader in that. But I actually just think it's your willingness to learn in that role, because definitely the role that we're in now, you could be tossed around so much that you really just have to be able to pick up the new skills required to be able to be successful in that. But that also just allows you to lead better in that role. So for me, the biggest thing was to be able to ask questions and know that would be the only way that I could develop in that area. I think it's also seen as like a weakness if you're asking questions, but I think the opposite. Like it really does demonstrate your willingness to learn in that area, and always to be better and better yourself. And that really helps you succeed in that role, even when you feel like you might be out of your depth a little bit. The other key thing for me is having that network of people who you can really lean on to be able to get answers from or get help from when you do feel a little bit out of your depth. And that kind of gives you that confidence that in the decisions that you make, that you are backed up by other people and you're not doing this all on your own, because I think it'd be rare to find somewhere that somebody's just running the show by themselves. I think it's pretty common that people have teams around them that make their lives a lot easier, and that's definitely the case for us.
Yeah. And what about for you, Cait?
I 100% agree with Sha there. It's that willingness to learn. I think it's just giving it a crack, really. I mean, that's how I ended up as the president of FoME. It was nobody else put their hand up, so I did. It wasn't all. It's not rocket science, and it's the same thing with the college. It's the same thing that happened with the college. So the College of Biomedical Engineers, I put my hand up to, I think I was the secretary last year, and now I'm the vice chair. Again, just put your hand up. It usually just falls into place. I think most people who know me would say I'm very outspoken. So I guess, and it's not because I'm confident. It's just I'm loud. So, and I'm not trying to say you have to have the loudest voice in the room to be a leader by any means. If anything, there's a lot to say for knowing when not to say something. But I think it is just giving it a go, and the fact that you're not necessarily going to get it right the first time. That's okay, but you have to be in it. You have to actually try if you want to grow and succeed in leadership. I think passion is also a really big part of it. The reason I wanted to be involved with FoME and the reason I wanted to be involved with the College of Biomedical Engineers, it's because I want to see good things happen, and I have an idea and I want to see it eventuate, and the best way to do that is to actually take part and to contribute. So that's also a really big part of it for me. But I think humility never goes astray. I think getting into a leadership position it's tough, and I'm wrong more times than I'm right about a lot of things, but that's okay. And I think it's okay to advocate for yourself. It's okay to have an opinion, and it's okay to just, throw ideas out there. Because being wrong's part of that. And if anything, the things that have stuck with me the most in the last 2.5 years of working, it's all the things I got wrong. And it was me going, how do I make sure that doesn't happen again? And how do I improve upon that situation, or make sure that I respond better next time? So it's just, it's that willingness to improve upon everything that you're learning. And, people aren't always going to agree with you. And it's so valuable to learn to just listen, understand their perspective, because usually it's really valuable and it actually gives you another perspective that's probably going to help you be better at your job. So I think that's a really big part of it as well.
Yeah, it's really good advice for people starting leadership or getting into those roles. And so just to end off, what's your final top tip for medical engineering students?
I'd say it's probably just to get out there and get involved, and seek more than one work experience placement. It's very easy to think you know exactly what you want because you've done some subjects and you found the content interesting, but sometimes the reality is pretty different, and there's nothing wrong with that, but it's a lot better to find out in undergrad than once you've signed a contract and you started working for somebody. I also worked in different industries as well. So if you have a job that's in hospitality, or if you're in manufacturing or customer service, don't knock it, because all of that experience is important for you down the track. And I think if you just utilize your networks, everybody hates it so much when you say network as an undergrad, people hate it, but it's so important. Not only just for professional networking, but also mentoring. I mean, some of the best people I know are people I've met from, events. And Sha, I work with him every day, but I still see him as a mentor, and I'm so fortunate to have formed that relationship really early in my career. And I very much hope that, he's somebody that I hope I can bounce ideas off for the rest of my career, pretty much, because it's so rare to find people who are usually experiencing the same thing as you. And so if you can find somebody at your place of work who, you can work with in the first couple of years of your graduate position, I think you'll find that it's extremely useful for feedback and professional development. And then hopefully, they're a lifelong friend too.
Oh, Cait, I'm honoured. That was very nice.
You should be.
Yeah, no, just to go off that, I think I was going to say it's cliche to say everyone's saying it, but networking, I even hate saying it now, but it's so important. And trying to actually build your network, but not even just for that purpose, but just getting out there and communicating with people and actually talking to them. And it doesn't even need to be about anything specific that you're interested in, but just getting out there and building those skills. Because I think communication is something that you're not really taught it that well at university. It's something that you're just expected to pick up and learn. And if you know that that's one of the areas you can work on, there's ways of doing that, and getting out to events and talking to people is one of them. But also just there's short courses available, and there's other stuff that's available that can mean the difference between you getting a job and not getting a job based on how you work on yourself. So if you find that that's an area you need to work on, then get out and practice and be willing to want it that bad to go and work on yourself. So otherwise I think Cait's nailed it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time, guys. We really appreciate having a chat with you and the advice you've been able to pass on. So, thanks.
Thanks for having us.
Yeah, you guys are doing awesome.
Stay safe.
A big thanks again to Sha and Cait for having a chat with us. And if you want to hear more about Field Orthopaedics, make sure to follow their Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn.
And as always, do not forget to like and subscribe to catch the next episode of FoME Friend. See you next time, and until then, live your life, it's now or never.